can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I feature inspirational entrepreneurs and founders and leaders. And today is no different. I have Robert, Dodd, and Joe Solano of xltech.net. You could check them out. Before we get started, Robert and Joe, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast, and since this is an agency-focused podcast today, Jason Swank, I actually did 2 interviews with Jason Swank, and that's actually how we met. And one is how he purchases agencies, what he looks for in that. And the other is how he built his other agency up to the over 8-figure mark. And so it's great. Also, Todd Taskey is another person. He actually helps buy and sell agencies. So he kind of acts as taking private equity with agencies, puts them together so they could get the second bite also. And so you can check out his podcast. His podcast is the Second Bite Podcast. So check that out and many more. And before I introduce today's guest, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And Rise 25, we help B2B businesses give to and connect to their dream 100 relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We help you run your podcast. For me, Robert and Joe, like the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way to do that than profile the people and companies I most admire on this planet and feature them on my podcast. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. We've been doing it for over a decade now. And it's the best thing I ever did. Robert, Joe, I've gone to people's weddings. I've become best friends with people. This is amazing. Hopefully when you guys come through Chicago, we'll go to dinner and hang out. So check that out. And without further ado, today, let me introduce Robert, Dodd, and Joe Solano. They're founders of XL Tech. They're a digital agency with over 20 years experience, specializing in helping US-based real estate brokers grow and scale their brokerages. They do this using their proven and tested agent acquisition framework. And I want to hear about what that entails, because I know we can all use it in our different niches and how you guys think about this. So we are going to go through what the agent acquisition framework is. They also created proprietary software for brokerages called eCampaign Pro and Zendio. eCampaign Pro is an email marketing system that helps build targeted agent-to-agent email marketing lists. It sends beautiful email marketing campaigns and tracks the results. And you guys can correct me on the numbers here, but I think it supports over 37,000 real estate professionals from around the country. And they also created Zendio. If that was enough, you guys weren't busy enough, Zendio all allows you to track your emails in Outlook. And thanks for joining me.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks.
And so start me off with how you both came together and first met.
Yeah, so both Joe and I have been involved in internet and internet related activities from the early days. Considering the early days back in the .com bubble era, and I started a firm called XL Technologies after coming down to Florida to work on a startup that like so many other startups at the time, kind of ran out of gas and never really able to meet the objectives that they wanted to meet. So, coming from New York, we came down to Florida. We were my wife and I were, new parents, didn't know what to do. This company looked like it wasn't going to survive. So we decided, hey, let's just start our own thing and, see where it goes. So Joe and I ended up coming together through a mutual project that we were working on at the time. Things got a little bit crazy back then. We kind of struggled with some lost clients and some, ups and downs in business in the early days. And
who doesn't, right?
Exactly. And it ended up, forging a relationship and a friendship that's, spanned more than, close to 20 years. And we've been together ever since. So, in that time frame, we co-developed eCampaign Pro, built it out, grew it successfully, incredibly quickly in the early days. And things were going great. We had, a large team. We were growing, month over month. Everything was phenomenal. And then, like with everything else, life comes in and decides to throw you a little bit of a curveball. We had some issues with getting on the Google naughty list, where a couple of our customers had gone ahead and done some things that Google didn't like, and it was before we could catch it. And it ended up getting us into hot water with Google, blocking a lot of our email traffic, which caused a significant disruption in our business. And anybody who's had any issues with Google knows it's not like you can pick up the phone, call the Google gods and say, hey, could you give us a mulligan on this one? They basically just blocked us, and it caused us to have to really double up, double down and, try to figure out how we were going to solve this problem. And it took a little bit of time in doing it. But out of that birthed, our next endeavor, which was building this agency. And that was birthed on the precipice that a lot of the people that were using our software at the time were real estate brokers, and they were using it to reach out to real estate agents in an attempt to get them to join their brokerages. And for those of people out there that don't really understand the business of a brokerage, real estate agents, their business is to get buyers and sellers who they can sell homes for, but they can't operate their business without being affiliated or associated with a brokerage. And brokers make their money based on the transactions that the real estate agents are doing. So from a brokerage perspective, their business is getting more productive real estate agents. From a real estate perspective, the real estate agent's job is to get buyers and sellers and, learn the business, work those leads, and hopefully, generate some commissions. But those commissions also get, basically put back into the broker's pocket as well. So the brokers want more agents because agents generate revenue. Revenue increases their bottom line. And that's how they grow, and that's how they scale, and that's how ultimately they exit the brokerage model. They either get acquired or they sell it to some other, company that's looking for, hundreds of agents or whatever the particular metrics are that they're looking at. And what we saw was a lot of the brokers in the market were using eCampaign Pro and using what we call a spray and pray approach, meaning that they didn't have any strategy behind what they were doing. And because there's no way to look into a particular market and know if an agent is potentially looking for a new opportunity or a new position or a new job, because they're all independent contractors working for themselves, you were basically in a situation where these brokers were sending out thousands of messages. These messages were getting flagged as spam. Agents weren't seeing them. As time went on, agents' inboxes were getting more and more crowded with other messages that other agents were sending, that other software vendors were sending, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what was happening is a lot of this stuff was falling on deaf ears. And we just saw this as an opportunity, one, to help them strategically map out the right approach to doing a cold email outreach campaign, but then also realizing that that was only one channel that you could reach agents on. And as social media became a bigger and bigger thing, and more agents gravitated to the social platforms like Facebook and Instagram, not only to source and generate their own leads, but obviously, to catch up on family and friends and everything else that you do on social media, we saw it as another opportunity to reach out to that audience in a more directed way and leverage our understanding of real estate, what the pain points are of the agents in the market, and what motivates them to potentially want to look at new opportunities, to create what we call an agent acquisition framework, which is a multi-channel, omnichannel approach to advertising a brokerage, as opposed to trying to, either cold call or email mass everybody in the market and see if they're willing to come over and, kind of work for you. We take the approach of we advertise their brand and their brokerage and position them uniquely in the marketplace against the competition so that agents want to work for them, so that agents come to them as opposed to you trying to pound the pavement and trying to get the agents to come to you. When agents come or any lead comes to you on their terms, they're much more open to having a discussion and potentially pursuing that discussion with some, with purpose, as opposed, like if you call somebody up and say, hey, would you like to join my brokerage? That could work. But what happens a lot of times is people just like to be polite, and they'll be like, sure, I'll have a meeting with you. And then when that meeting comes along, they either don't show up or they're not really well qualified, and you end up wasting a lot of your time. So what we've done is we've created a system and a framework that allows you to get your message out to every every potential real estate agent in your market. And then as those leads come in, we found that a lot of these brokers were just too darn busy running their businesses like any other small business to deal with these effectively. And people would inquire, and then we would reach out to the brokerages and we were like, hey, did you speak to ABC, realtor? Oh no, I got tied up. I'll call them tomorrow. Well, it's been 2 days. Like, chances of you getting in touch with that person are, pretty much diminished at this point. They've already been, off on the new thing or got, distracted with the shiny new object in front of them. So we realized too that there was a hole. We can create great leads and we can get the message out and we can do it in a very strategic manner. But if they don't have an effective way to follow up with these people and manage them effectively, then it really doesn't work for them. So the element that we added to our framework was a full-time appointment setter dedicated to that particular brokerage, so that as the leads come in, they can be pre-qualified, vetted out, make sure that they are a good fit based on what criteria we've established at the beginning of a project with that particular brokerage. And then if they are a good fit, we basically book them on a shared calendar, and then we nurture that appointment to make sure that those agents that are inquiring are actually showing up to those appointments. And if they don't show up because life happens or because something else occurred that prevented them from getting to that appointment, we continue to follow up with those people. So we essentially take everything that you would need, from the creative development to the strategic direction, to the research, to the competition analysis, everything that's necessary to create, a fully functional, omnipresent marketing campaign to get the message out. And then as those leads come in, we also handle all the pre-qualification, appointment setting, and follow-up for those people, all the way to the onboarding process. Once they've committed to joining the brokerage, then it's up to the brokerage at that point to onboard them into their system. But we facilitate everything up to that point, which allows them to scale much faster. Because our system and because of our experience, we can come at the problem with a level of predictability that we know certain things are going to work in certain markets. And that allows not only them to even out the ebbs and flows in their recruiting cycles, because even though you're bringing new people in, there's always an attrition factor. People leave the business, people retire, people just decide they're not going to do it anymore, especially as the market tightens up. So this helps them even out those cycles of boom and bust and make it more predictable month over month that they're going to bring in a certain number of, qualified agents that are at different stages of consideration, because not every agent is ready to move the day that they inquire. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. Sometimes it takes a couple of months. It depends on their particular situation. There could be contractual obligations that are preventing them from leaving. There could be deals in their pipeline that they want to make sure close before they move to the new destination. So we figure all that out, and then we decide what's the best way to follow up or nurture these people to make sure that when they are ready to go, that they think of our clients first.
Yeah, and we'll walk through the steps of the agent acquisition system. I know you mentioned a couple of the overarching points here. And what's interesting is, you're kind of at the whim, if you have a hosting company or email company, at the users. And if they do something that they shouldn't do, same thing with shared hosting on a website. One person does something, it's flagged, and it ruins it for everyone else. So I totally get that. And, Joe, I want to hear from you. I know you're CTO, the technical person. You guys have kind of, if you're an agency owners, like, we just need a software, right? And then you started with the software and you're like, well, we couldn't meet the full needs of the clients. You almost felt like you completed the picture with the agency, but like, grass is always greener, I guess. Because when I talk to agency owners, like, if we just had a SaaS business, and you guys started with that. So Joe, tell me about just the creation, the beginning of this, of the software.
Sure. Yeah. So we had kind of back in, this was early or late 99, early 2000s, and we had developed kind of a piecemeal system for email marketing. And then we took that and we started to try and sell that early stage of eCampaign Pro to small businesses. And it was very much literally walk up to someone's door, knock on the door, walk inside, and try and sell them face to face. And this is before the Constant Contacts and MailChimps were really popular and email marketing was really a thing. And so it was a real difficult challenge for us to do that. And so at the time, one of the other individuals that was involved with us was in real estate. And so he thought that this would be a great fit for the real estate solution. And so we took it and then we just verticalized it specifically for real estate and kind of changed the technology focus so that we were just focused on email marketing for real estate and specifically agent to agent real estate marketing. So brokers, open houses, recruiting real estate agents, those sorts of things. And then as we started to manage those relationships with that SaaS product and those individuals, we saw a lot of things that those particular brokerage clients were doing well and not doing well. And that's what allowed us to then take that domain knowledge and basically grow it into where we are today with the agency side of Excel Technologies. And at the same time, we are in the process of taking the domain knowledge from the agency side and putting it back into a separate SaaS product that will be an agent hire solution that provides a more exhaustive set of capabilities than just eCampaign Pro provides. So basically systematizing and providing a SaaS solution for the agent recruiting lifecycle.
Do people come in and just use eCampaign Pro? Do you allow unique people or users to just use the software, or
Sure.
is that only bundled if they are using the agency?
No, we still have thousands of clients on eCampaign Pro. It's been a bit of a feeder mechanism from eCampaign Pro into the agency side of the business as they kind of hit a wall sometimes with what their growth objectives are. So when they want to scale at a faster clip or reach a broader segment of the audience, then they can come to us on the agency side, and then we can tackle it from a multi-platform approach like Rob was describing, where they're not only getting email, they're getting Facebook ads, they're getting Instagram ads, they're seeing YouTube videos, they're seeing on TikTok, LinkedIn, sponsored in-mail messages, LinkedIn feed ads, etc. All of these different platforms and delivery mechanisms to basically push their brand out there.
Tell me about agency right now listening and thinking, I want to create a software, or I have something internal. What are the biggest mistakes that you would say or advice you'd give to them? Maybe it's don't create a software. I don't know. But what advice would you have?
I think the biggest thing is don't underestimate the amount of time, energy, and effort and development resources that you really need to throw at the problem. Now, that's gotten significantly easier in the last 10 years or so, where you can stand on the shoulders of giants and leverage various toolkits and systematize things in such a way, as well as, the communication vehicles like we are with Zoom today. You can have development teams scattered all over the world. We're a completely remote team right now. So we have people in different countries all over the place. And so you can leverage different skill sets in a much easier way. But it's still an unbelievable undertaking. And I will guarantee you that no matter how good your estimation skills, it will take longer than you think.
Yeah, unless you have a Joe, CTO.
No, even with the Joe, it takes a long time.
You mentioned, Robert, the right approach for a cold email. I imagine, people are just using a tool. It's just a tool. But when they hire you at Excel Tech, you have the strategies and you help them get to the next level on a variety of things. But let's just talk email for a second, since we're on the software. What are some mistakes? You mentioned the right approach for cold email outreach. What are some mistakes you see people making? Because any business uses cold email. So what are some of those mistakes?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that I see people make is one is the frequency and the cadence is too aggressive for the cold audience. It's one thing if you have subscribers and people have asked you for that information, but when you're doing B2B marketing and you're just trying to feel out individuals who may or may not be interested in what you're doing, the tendency that I see all the time, and I think the biggest mistake people make, is they get too aggressive with the amount of emails that they're sending, and they throw up on the page. It's too much information too soon, right? You really have to have the right balance of cadence and messaging so that it actually gets you the result that you're looking for. Because if you come at the problem and just say, well, a lot of people take it and they just do simple math. They go, well, there's 20,000 people in a market. And if I send 20,000 messages and I get, 5% of those people to actually buy my thing or do what I want them to do. And again, that never really works out properly because there's no way to get 100% of anything. I don't care if you have a 100% opted in list delivered to somebody's inbox. The way that algorithms work today, especially with Google, everything is uniquely monitored based on your preferences, how you interact, how other people have received that same message and interacted. So the Google algorithm doesn't just look at the way you consume a message. It looks and says, oh, this message has been delivered to thousands of Google subscribers. How did they consume the message? How engaged were they with the message? Did they open it? Did they stay on the message for a while? Did they immediately delete it? Did they mark it spam? And all those signals come back in and determine how effective you're going to be at reaching that audience. Even though these people may have, been completely interested in what you were sending, but Google algorithms took over and said, well, we're going to stick it in the promotions folder, or we're going to stick it in spam this time. So the way that you prevent that is to be more tactful and strategic with the approach and realize that if I've never communicated with you before, me trying to send you every bit of information on my offer or my company is too much too soon. And chances are it's going to have a negative impact overall on future messages potentially getting through. So one of the things that we look at when we strategically work with a customer is we work out email sequences using, pain point agitation, where we don't try to say everything at once. Sometimes it's just a simple introduction. And then from there, we wait to see what happens with that message, how engaged were they with that message, and then we hit the next message. And we do it in a strategic way so that it's the cadence of the messages is spaced out appropriately, so you're not overwhelming people. And also the time of day matters, and also the day of the week matters with people, depending on what you're sending. So, if think about yourself, you come in first thing in the morning, you triage your inbox. You're going through all the stuff that came in overnight. A lot of it is junk. A lot of it is just like, I don't have time for this right now. Push it off to the side. Well, that's pretty much how everybody triages their inbox, right? So if you send emails 7, 6, 5 o'clock in the morning, you're just going to basically be lumped into a sea of junk that is in everybody's inboxes, and they're just starting their day. So they're trying to figure out, what do I have to do my day? What's my calendar look like? I'll look at this later. But what happens is later doesn't come because you get distracted and you completely forget. So even something that gets filed away doesn't necessarily get consumed or read. So making sure that you have the right cadence, the right subject line, you're testing things appropriately, and you're utilizing, time of day and time and day of week to the best ability that you can based on, some of the data that we see coming in. We're very data driven, so we look at everything very precisely to make sure that what we assume is actually occurring, because assumptions are great, but they don't really provide you with any real concrete evidence. It's not until the data comes back and we see the engagement rate, we see the click-through rates of the emails to determine exactly what's happening. Because now with a lot of the Apple iOS changes, read rates are becoming less and less, of a real indicator as to whether someone's engaged with your message. So, you could see read rates are going up and you're like, wow, my messages are really being received well, but you realize it's just a false number because it's going up simply because of the iOS changes that were made. And a lot of these messages are being prefetched and open, so to speak, prior to them ever getting to the actual individual's inbox, which skews your results. So we really look at engagement based on the click-through rates of the emails, the call to actions. And then if we're driving them to specific landing pages, what's the conversion rate of that landing page? How effective is that page itself? Are we seeing, some sort of impediments or delays in people actually taking the action that we want them to take? And then we can make some strategic adjustments there.
I know you have, specific domain knowledge and niche, and now the niche seems totally obvious. Was there you mentioned, Joe, one of those original customers of the software was in that niche. Was there ever a point where it wasn't so obvious, or was it always, just from the beginning, brokerages?
Yeah, we were always, at least from those early stages, focused on real estate. Now, the specific niche of recruiting for brokerages for real estate is I would say, more recent. Because there's lots of different aspects of technology and marketing that real estate needs in order to effectively run their business. And so, there's different companies out there, whether they be CRM vendors or lead generation companies, training companies, or other toolkit vendors, et cetera, to help support the real estate industry. The recruiting part of it we saw as something that was really unfulfilled in any meaningful way, especially from a marketing standpoint. People always, and brokerages always look at recruiting as, I'm just going to do cold calling, right? Or I'm just going to do email blast. And cold calling is really the kind of like baseline that everybody uses. But nowadays, with less and less individuals really answering the phone from numbers that they know, even real estate agents who do interactions with all sorts of different people, a lot less of them are taking those inbound calls. It's a lot more difficult to get to them in that way. And so those vehicles are a lot less effective. And so it's a kind of confluence of a change in technology usage, from individuals, as well as, are seeing the need in the marketplace.
Yeah. Robert, can you walk me through a little bit, just high level, when you say agent acquisition system, just walk me through what that means a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a phased approach that we take to the challenge that a brokerage faces. The first thing is understanding exactly what makes them unique. So the first phase of our acquisition system is we have to understand what makes that brokerage unique. How do we position them against the competition in the market? Because what I always tell brokers that I speak to is you have to remember, you're not recruiting in a bubble. You're not the only person out there trying to reach this same cohort of agents. And when you look at a marketplace, there is a finite number of agents in that marketplace. It's not like, in traditional marketing where you could take, okay, give me a 3% lookalike audience of everybody who seems to look just like my customer. Like that doesn't exist from this perspective, because if I look in a market, if I say Palm Beach, Florida, there's 20,000 agents in that market, roughly. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to grow. You're not going to find 40,000 somewhere else. There's only 20. And in that 20, there's a number of brokerages that obviously are associated with those 20,000 agents. Each one of those brokerages are trying to attract those same agents, get them to move from point A to point B, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to understand exactly what your competition is doing, what their messaging is, and how they're communicating their value to those agents so that you can position yourself effectively against that messaging. So the first step of our agent acquisition process is to essentially go in and do a deep dive into the brokerage clients that we work with. We spend about an hour and a half in a kickoff discovery call with them. We transcribe that call, and then we give them back that transcription and we say, look, this is what we heard from you, and this is what we're going to base our approach on. So let's make sure that, everybody's on the same page, that we heard it correctly, that you didn't forget to give us any information, that it's all there. So that's what we start with. And that becomes sort of our blueprint. And from there, we spend a week's worth of research into their brand, into the competition. We dig through all their social media. We dig through all their previous marketing materials. We look at their website. We look at how they've accomplished, getting the agents that they currently have today. What's the gap look like between where they are now and where they want to be? How big is that gap? What is the best way to approach this based on what they currently have available to them? And then once we've got that, then we have our team come together and we build out a strategy board. And that strategy board basically takes all the notes, all the research, and everything we've done. And then from there, we start to construct an outline for what we think the messaging needs to be. We have a bunch of copywriters that we work with that are all conversion-focused copywriters. So we get with them and we start hashing out all the different assets we're going to need based on the platforms that we're going to be, basically leveraging. So Facebook, Instagram stories, LinkedIn, feed ads, InMail, et cetera. So we figure out what those communication channels are going to be, and that's driven based on what we think is the best approach for the client as well as their budget, because obviously each one of these platforms requires an additional ad spend. So it has to work within their budget. From there, we build out all the messaging and all the brand congruency. So everything, all the messaging, all the brand, everything that we're doing is very congruent, and it all fits with one piece into another, because our ultimate goal is to get this message out in such a way that every agent in the marketplace essentially sees it on one of these platforms in one way, shape, form, or another. Either they visit the website, they receive an email, they see an ad, and all that has to be congruent. It all has to work together as one big unit, as opposed to a bunch of just disconnected things that you're just throwing out into the marketplace. From there, once we've got approval of everything that we've put together for the brokerage, and this usually includes constructing a fully functional recruiting website for them. Because a lot of times what we find is you look at their brand and you look at what they've got, and they spend all this time, energy, and effort on the consumer side of things, but then they don't really put much effort into communicating their value to the agents themselves. So there's no destination for an agent to go to a lot of times that has enough information for them to make an informed decision as to whether I want to come work with you or not. So we put together an entire recruiting website for them. And then that helps us drive traffic to that site so that we have control over that asset and we can make adjustments as we see fit based on the data that comes in. Once we've got all the assets in place, the site is ready to go. We sit down with the client, we take them through the entire process and why we did what we did and explain the methodology and why we used the messaging that we did and why we highlighted certain features over others, et cetera. Once they approve that, then we load it into all the platforms and we begin to run the ads. And then we assign a team member who's fully trained by us in the appointment setting scenario. So we take a person, we train them, we let them know what the objections are probably going to be, how to handle those objections, what the client is, comfortable with us communicating and not communicating. Sometimes they don't want to talk about compensation. Sometimes they do. So we get all that information from them up front. And then once the leads come in, we begin to pre-qualify those leads. Once those leads are qualified, we book them on a calendar, and then we onboard them into this agent hire platform that we're developing that allows them to see all the communication that is happening with all the prospects, where they are in the pipeline stages of consideration, how many people are ready to move today, how many people are weeks out, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, all the messaging, all the reporting, everything is done there. And then at the end of every 30 days, we sit down with the client, we take them through all the numbers, we collect feedback from them, understand exactly what's happening with the people that they are onboarding, how effective has it been for them? Are they running into any bottlenecks? We've had situations where we've brought in so many leads to a brokerage where we kind of broke them. They were like, can't handle this. We can't do this anymore. We're not set up for this. We didn't expect this. We've never seen this before. So, we try to make sure that we have everything in place for them to be as successful as they can be working with us. And it all depends on their objectives. Some brokerages, they want anybody. They'll take a license in a heartbeat and they're good to go. Others are very selective. They want specific production numbers. They want specific length of time in the business, et cetera. So one of the other real values that we bring is we create custom audiences off of their data that they have through proprietary systems that they're using, as well as data that we've been managing and maintaining of real estate agents across the country for the better part of 17 plus years. So we take those data sets and we combine them into custom audiences. And then that's how we're able to effectively target the cohort of the agents specifically the way that they want to target them. Because a lot of times if you use, for instance, Facebook interest categories to target for recruiting, what you end up in a situation is you're targeting interests, and interests overlap very broadly in real estate. So someone who's interested in real estate or real estate Zillow or NAR or one of those interest level categories could also be a home inspector. It could be a marketing person. It could be a roofer. It could be anybody. So you end up showing your ads to a lot of the audience that don't really have any need for what you're selling, which drives your cost up. By creating custom audiences, we can be much more precise with the messaging and know exactly who we're communicating with, because we know that these are known quantities. We know that these people fit these criterias and therefore are a good fit for this brokerage, which allows us to tailor the messaging effectively based on the type of audience that we're trying to communicate with. And then finally, at the end of all that, like I said, we set up a series of custom reports that allows them to see all the key performance indicators on the campaigns, how well they're performing, the cost per lead, cost per thousand, cost per acquisition, everything that they're going to need to make an informed decision. And then we sit down with them and we try to collect any additional feedback from them. And sometimes from that point, they'll say, hey, I want to scale this out. I want to go into another state or another county or another area, or I want to put more money into the budget. And then we can guide them effectively based on what we're seeing with the data that's coming in. So the entire system is not only the strategic approach to it, but the execution side, and then the software platform that allows them to manage their their entire ecosystem of ads that we're running and all the reporting and all the conversations that we're having with the agents, so they can see a complete holistic view of everything that's happening.
And Robert, and that's why agencies want to just have a software company. It's a lot of work, but it's very comprehensive. I know we only have a little bit of time left, but I did want to touch on, so people can understand and kind of grab on to exactly what you do. What did you do with North Group?
Yeah, so North Group was an interesting case study. So he came in through eCampaign Pro years ago, and he built an entire brokerage, an ERA brokerage, using email alone. And this is probably back in 2006, 2007, maybe. Was very successful with it. And back then, email was just a different animal. There wasn't quite as much competition. There wasn't quite as much noise in the agents' inboxes. So the deliverability was easier. Spam algorithms and things like that hadn't really kicked in too hard yet. So he was able to build a brokerage very effectively. And then he sold that brokerage and kind of retired for a little bit and, just decided that he was going to come back and, start something new again. And he started this group called North Group. So he originally came to us and said, hey, I want to do email. And we said, Scott, love doing email with you. It'd be great, but it's just not the same as it was 10 years ago. Here are the limitations that you're going to face this time around versus the last time around. No. I still want to do it. Like, Scott, I'm telling you, there's a better way. We've got this great new approach. Let us work. He's like, no, I want to do email. So he did email for 1 or 2 months. We kept working him, and he really didn't see the results that he was looking for. And he said, man, you were right. It really didn't work the way that I expected it to, like it did last time. What is this other approach? So we explained, the agent acquisition system and what we do with it. And he's like, all right, let's try it. And he was completely blown away. I mean, he started with, I don't know, Joe, was it maybe 40 or 50 agents at the time?
Yeah, somewhere in the 40 to 50 agent range.
And a lot of those people came in just because of his name recognition in the marketplace, because they knew him from his previous broker, but he was having trouble scaling that out, right? And he was just in North Carolina. So we basically put together an entire framework for him, did all the strategy, launched the campaign, and the results were phenomenal for him. He just kept getting more and more leads. He's growing month over month over month, to the point where, we started at 50. I think he's close to 700. Over 700. Plus. Yeah, about 700 agents now. He's expanded into multiple markets in the North Carolina market, and also expanded into South Carolina and now into Georgia, and potentially going into Florida next, because he realizes that with the way that we've put everything together, that it's kind of like a predictable result that we can get into different markets, because now we know we have the messaging dialed in, we have his offer dialed in. So it's really working well for him.
Do you ever get offered or take equity? Because essentially you're, someone's starting with a small firm, and then you're like, wait, we just grew this brokerage to 1,000 brokers from almost scratch.
Yeah, we don't get equity. It's an interesting concept. We haven't really explored that at all, but it's very gratifying, honestly, for us, because, it's sort of like with you, right? You're helping businesses grow. You're helping them get the word out, and you're helping them kind of build their dream. And I feel like that's a lot of what we're doing, because a lot of the brokers that we work with, this is something that they've either created, it's a new endeavor for them, or maybe they've just been stuck for a number of years and haven't been able to really get past the hump. And then we can come in and really help them grow their business. And that's very gratifying. So I take great pride in our ability to get results for our clients. We take it personally when we don't. There's a lot of situations where, we've got great success stories, but there's a few where, sometimes you just can't help people. We do our best to help everybody, but it's very gratifying to help someone grow their business, because if we're helping them grow and they're successful, then we're, inherently successful as a result of that as well, because they're going to continue with us. And, a lot of our clients, we take great pride in the fact that they stay with us greater than 12 months in almost every case. And the average agency client lasts about 3 months. So, that's very, very satisfying to us, knowing that we're creating true value to our brokerage clients. And that's why they're sticking around with us.
Well, I want to be the first one to thank you. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Joe, for sharing your journey, sharing what you do. I want to point people to xltech.net to learn more. And they have some amazing resources on there you can check out, especially if you're a brokerage. But if not, still, there's a lot to learn what you guys do. And check out more episodes of InspiredInsider.com and Rise 25. And want to be the first one. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.